Welcome to CO Interviews, a production of Gore Column, in which we take the time to speak with small cap executives about what's going on with their companies. With us today, we're happy to have him back after a bit of a hiatus. Kelvin Burton, he's the head of investor relations at American Creek Resources, trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol AMK. For those of you who are new to the story, American Creek, it's a great story. They've got a great portfolio of gold properties in British Columbia's prolific Golden Triangle, which is one of the richest areas of mineralization in the world. It contains numerous world-scale deposits, including the high-grade Brucejack mine, Seabridge's KSM, which boasts the largest undeveloped gold deposit by reserves in the world. The southern half of the system that they sit on contains about 190 million ounces of gold, 1.2 billion ounces of silver, 55 billion pounds of copper. That's how big the numbers are. They get me tongue twisted. And their flagship Treaty Creek is joint venture with Tudor Gold, whose CEO Walter Storm funded Osisko to become a world-class gold mine. American Creek owns 20%, a fully carried interest on what looks like is a rapidly developing world-class deposit. And to that end, Eric Sprott, back on July 4th, 2020, said, it certainly looks like they have 20 million ounces and they could easily get 30 or 40 or 50 million ounces of gold. Kelvin, let's talk about it. Welcome back.
Hey, good to be with you again, George.
Well, let's start off first with, the headline we're talking about is the initial mineral resource estimate, 19.4 million ounces measured and indicated. It looks like, and 7.9 million ounces of inferred. So it looks like your initial resource calculation exceeded Eric's prediction. You're on your way to some of his higher predictions. What do you think?
Well, that's exactly what it's looking like, George. Very, very impressive. And we're going to go over the details of that in just a moment. But the potential on this is just crazy. And I think we are on our way to what Eric was talking about after I explained to you what's happening this year in the program that's taking place up at Treaty Creek.
So now there's a report out that most layman investors don't. It's called the 43101. It came out with the resource calculation that gets into a lot of the detail. A lot of those details are hard for a lot of investors to keep up with and what they really mean, right? So
yeah,
what are some of the key takeaways from that report?
Sure, it is a tough slogging report. There's a lot of pages to it, but there are some key elements that I think are important, and one of them is actually when we look at the large hydrothermal system that we're in. So it's called the Sulphurets Hydrothermal system. And as you mentioned in your introduction, it actually includes the deposits that are on Seabridge's land, namely the KSM deposits. It also includes the Brucejack and that's owned by Pretivm, and Snowfield, which was owned by Pretivm and now by Seabridge. And that's the southern half of the system. And then, of course, Treaty Creek is the northern half of the system. And a lot of these deposits, they're large porphyry deposits that are copper deposits with some gold and silver. And what's different about the Goldstorm deposit, which is one of what we think could be many deposits on Treaty Creek, is that it's a gold deposit with some copper and silver on it. And so, as you mentioned in your introduction there, those numbers were gold equivalent ounces to be able to give you a sense of what it's worth in gold right now. But over about 90% of it is actually just gold. Having said that, if you break it down, there's quite a bit of copper and silver on there as well. So I'm just going to give you a quick breakdown of what that actually looks like, George. So in terms of just the actual gold, under measured and indicated, there's 17.33 million ounces. Under inferred, there's 7.22 for a total of 24.5 million ounces of gold. For silver, under M&I, there's 93.41, and under inferred, there's another 40.57 million ounces of silver for a total of 133.98 million ounces of silver. And then for copper, measured and indicated is just over 1 billion pounds, and another 330 million ounces inferred. So you put those together, it's just over 1.4 billion pounds of copper. So even though those don't make up a lot, the thing is so big that we still have over a billion pounds, or about 1.4 billion pounds of copper, all categories, and close to 134 million ounces of silver, all categories, and just under 25 million ounces of gold. When we put that all together and account it for gold, it works out to 19.4 million ounces measured and indicated, and another 7.9 million inferred. And just if someone doesn't know what,
so that's if you take it all as gold and measure it just as a gold equivalent, those are the numbers.
yes, exactly. And just
Unbelievable.
if people aren't familiar, measured and indicated is a tighter spacing. It's more confidence that it's there, and therefore it's actually worth more. And quite often when your company is being valued, it's being based on measured and indicated, and then inferred means that the spacing in this case is wider, and that'll be one of the goals, is to move that over to measured and indicated, because that's usually what your company is actually based on when they're talking about, you know, what you're worth in terms of dollars per ounce, that type of thing.
And the work isn't done, because it's not as if, all right, that's it, work's done. And by the way, if it was, those would be fantastic numbers.
Yes.
But Treaty Creek is open in all directions. So what I want to do is talk about the size and scale, and more importantly, seeing is believing. So maybe what we're going to do here is share some slides.
Sure.
All right, so give me a minute just to pop that open.
Yeah, and while you do that, George, I'll just mention that it's the Goldstorm deposit on Treaty Creek that is open in all directions. And Treaty Creek, we think there's actually the potential for at least 4 major deposits and a bunch of other smaller, higher grade ones as well. So, and this slide here is a perfect example of that. Now, what this slide is showing is a bigger issue, and it's the reason why projects like Treaty Creek are in big demand right now. What this is showing is it's actual production taking place, and the black bars there, those are over 6 million ounces deposits. The light blue is, or the medium blue is 1 to 6 million ounces, and the lightest blue is under 1 million ounces. And what this is showing here, if you can see my mouse on there,
Actually, I can't see your mouse yet. You know, you just hit that button where it's waiting for you to control the screen.
Is it there?
There you go.
Okay, great. So what this is showing is, I mean, this goes all the way back to when I was born, 1970. But it's showing in the last little while here that the discoveries are way down, and that's just a reality of it. The fact that
that's an understatement. Way down is an understatement.
Gold is being produced far faster than it's being discovered. And so, and it takes a while to put a mine into production. So the crunch is on now to be able to get deposits, and to be able to get large deposits, in particular what we call generational deposits, which would be these black bars down here. And as you can see, there's not many of them around. This discovery is one of the largest ones in the last 30 years as far as a gold discovery is concerned. And this bottom line across here, where you can see the last few years have been, that's about 20 million ounces of gold, all categories. And of course, in this case, we had 27 million ounces of gold, you know, so which is greater than everything else discovered over the last couple of years here. And so it's very significant. But you can see that it's trending downwards here, and that's why these large scale deposits, where there's a consistency to the grade, and they know that they can produce for, instead of 5 to 12 years, that maybe 15 or 20 or 25 or 40 years, those ones are in huge demand because of that graph right there.
By the way, just something I'm inferring, I don't want to interrupt you, but I see that like in the 1980s, you see a spike in discoveries. In the 2000s, see a spike, which were preceded by times just like this, where there was low discovery. So I have to presume that low discoveries drives the prices higher. And that's why you get more and more discovery action going on, because price brings in investments. So do you think that's where we're going?
Yes, there's no doubt that there's another chart that I didn't put on here that shows that investment is increasing dramatically right now because of the fact that gold price is going up. And as there's a scarcity of product, then prices continue to go up. I know that a lot of the discussion about prices going up is involved with printing fiat currencies into oblivion and everything else, but there actually still are those market forces where when there's not as much of something and it's hard to get, prices go up. And I think that's what's going to happen with projects that are the very best projects, is that they will get bidding wars on them and that type of thing, because companies really need to make sure that they're looking a long ways out and securing the resources in the ground so that they can produce it down the road.
And speaking of, tracking, last year, as the price of gold started to really move, American Creek had a great move in its stock price, and it's kind of settled back in, still holding. But what are your comments, if any? Because we can't make any, we can't provide investment advice as to whether you're undervalued, overvalued, and any comment on price activity that you want to address with the shareholders?
Sure, that's no problem at all. There's actually a graph I'm going to show in a couple of slides here that actually will show that, but I'm happy to talk about it right now. And that is that we did go up with the price of gold last year, and then we started to slide back in the fall to where we are right now. And I believe that, well, right now, as we know, gold has started to move back up again. There's always a lag in there. And I believe that we will be going up along with the price of gold, simply because when you have that many ounces in the ground, they have to be accounted for. And when you're looking at adding the number of ounces that we think that we will have this year, I think there'll be a huge discrepancy there. So I really do think that we're terribly undervalued, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail with a graph to be able to show you that, George, in just a minute. But going back to the size of this thing, this is a different graph here showing that as far as initial resources are concerned, and that's what we had this year was our initial resource calculation. If you were to add up all of the companies on the TSX and the TSX Venture, add them all together in 2019, which was the last year that we had this calculation done, they found 15.6 million ounces of gold. The largest one was IAMGOLD, which it was just over 3 million ounces, and the smallest one here, it was 33,000 ounces. So put this into perspective. We have about close to half again as much of as everyone else put together, just with this one deposit called Goldstorm on Treaty Creek. And as you mentioned, we don't know where the edges of it are yet. We're still looking for those. And if I go to the next slide here, this one here is showing discoveries by area or geographical area over a 10-year period. That was from 26 to 2016. And if you look in the middle here, you'll see that Russia and United States had 27 million ounces, which is about what we have just on the one deposit, and not far behind Canada. So, you and I have talked and shown slides and stuff of showing, this deposit is a couple times taller than the CN Tower, and it would take up, the main waterfront of Toronto or downtown Minneapolis and that type of thing. But in this case, it's showing how big this is compared to what everyone else is finding. And it's a monster.
Yeah, that headline puts it, to put this huge gold resource this number is equal to all discoveries made by all companies in the USA or Russia within 10 years from 2006 to 2016.
Yeah, exactly. So the bottom line, as it says at the bottom here, it just shows that, 10 million ounce plus type of deposits are just really rare. And fortunately, in this case, it's in Canada, and that's becoming worth more and more, George, as we start to see political unrest. There's another Vancouver company who has a project in Kyrgyzstan, and there's problems with that one politically, and the government there seizing the project. And there's big concerns over projects going on in Peru right now because of the election that's coming up, and it looks like the communist guy may take the elections. those are big game changers when you already have all your stuff there. You can't take your ball and go home. You have to leave it there. And so being in Canada is becoming a much more weighted element in the decision making as to where these majors want to put their next big mines.
All right, so there's no doubt we've kind of framed the size of this initial resource estimate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, why don't you show us this first? I was going to ask you about, where do we go from here?
As far as work on the project goes?
Well, what, so this is what I was going to ask. We framed how big this initial resource estimate is.
Oh, okay. How big
it's
it is?
amazing
Yeah,
how
okay.
you framed it, and that really puts into perspective. Where do we go from here?
Sure. Well, as far as the program, I'll get to that in just a second. But in terms of going back to your question that you asked just a few moments ago about our valuation and that type of thing, I really think that the entire project is terribly undervalued. And when we look at the operator, Tudor Gold, who is a great operator, and they're doing a fantastic job of this. If you look at what the marketplace is valuing them at right now. So in this case, we've actually kind of cut off the right-hand corner of the chart with our images. But what it shows is, it does show the value of gold going up and then taking a recess back from last fall. But right now, junior valuations sit at $67 an ounce gold. So that's where they've taken all the juniors who have ounces, and they've calculated what their stock price is, what their market cap is, and they divided by the amount of ounces of gold that they have. And so this is a USD number. And the other important thing about this, and that's it's just using the measured and indicated category, not the inferred. So in our case, it's using 19.4 million ounces. So what it's showing is that if you go look at the slide just before us here, it was showing that the Fundamental Research Group did a fantastic report on Tudor Gold and on Treaty Creek, and they based or targeted their valuation for it at just over $5. Oh, thank you. at just over $5 per share for Tudor Gold. And when you look at that, they're actually valuing the number of ounces that they have, which is 60% of what Treaty Creek has, at $78 an ounce. And then RBC Capital just came out with a report as well. And they're the ones who are saying that the average overall is $67 per ounce of gold. And again, that's USD. So in Canadian, yeah. So in Canadian dollars, that's $81 an ounce. So now if we move forward and we look at this screen here, when we look at Tudor right now in the marketplace is only being valued at $40 an ounce, which is just terribly undervalued compared to.
Pardon me, Kelvin. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. But when you look at the $78 an ounce, which is the target price for Fundamental Research, and you look at the $81 an ounce, which is the average, Tudor is terribly undervalued right now for what they already have, let alone any programs this year. And then when you look at American Creek, we're actually only being valued at $24 an ounce, and they're the exact same ounces as Tudor's are. So we're even more undervalued by about half, right? When you look at us at 24 and Tudor at 40. But when you compare that $24 an ounce to, again, what was projected at $78 an ounce, or the average, which is $81 an ounce, we're just terribly undervalued right now. So I think we're literally one of the best values that's out there if we weren't running a program.
Do you think it may be a case of it's almost too good to be true? And because that initial resource estimate, again, we framed it in so many different ways. It's unbelievable relative to everything else.
It is. And it's also a matter of just the news getting out. There's a lot of people who still don't know about the companies. And I can say that Tudor is doing a great job since the resource calculation came out. They're doing a great job at getting that word out. And we always do our best to do that as well. And so I think part of it is just a matter of time and exposure and people realizing what this is and the potential that they have on it.
So let's talk about, where we go from here.
Sure. So where we go from here is two things. I think that this price that we have will increase as gold increases and as the program increases and as our marketing does. As far as gold is concerned, let's deal with that one first. So everyone can have their own opinion about gold. I certainly have mine. It's kind of a clue, George, when they stop counting the M2 money supply, that they're just going to print into oblivion, right? So they've literally stopped counting the main measurement for money, M2. So that tells you, it gives you a good hint as to how much more money is coming down the pipe here. So I really do think that gold will continue to rise, and very strongly. But my opinion doesn't really matter. But guys like Ronnie Stoffele, his opinion does matter. He's one of the two authors of the In Gold We Trust report, which is the industry standard for everyone out there. So all the experts and gurus on gold read this report. And this year they came out with two versions. They usually come out with two versions, but the condensed one's only 24 pages, but the expanded one is 355 pages long. So, but it's very in depth. I recommend that everyone should read it. It's again, like I say, it's what all the gurus read and everything else. And you can download either version. I'll have that on our website for you to be able to pick up, or you can just type in Gold We Trust in your browser and it'll come up. It's a free report. And so
the Wall Street Journal, by the way, raves about it, as a go-to reading source for anyone investing in gold or gold related projects.
Exactly. So there's 2 points I just want to take out of this. One is that Ronnie is actually so keen on Treaty Creek and its potential that he actually became one of the members of the board for our partner Tudor Gold. And that's huge, feather in their cap, and for the whole project in general. And so the other thing is what he says in his report. Now, I'm not really going to do a great job of summing up 355 pages, but in the presentation that Ronnie did, he gave us about 6 or 8 points here. I'm just going to talk about the last couple ones because we don't have time to talk about them all. But in here he does mention he thinks cryptocurrencies will not replace physical gold as a store of value. That mining stocks will have the most profitable year in history in 2021, and they expect gold by the end of the year to go up to about $2,700, and by the end of the decade to about $4,800. So I will rely on him and his expertise as to where gold's going. And when gold goes up, then that value that each company has in terms of the amount of dollars per ounce is going to go up as well. And so that's very significant. And then as far as the program is concerned, as we add more ounces, that's going to go up as well. Just before I talk about the program, I just took 2 screenshots off our website because I want people to be aware of this. So whether it's this report by Ronnie or some of the other reports that I showed you some graphics of earlier, they are on our website. You just scroll down from the top, you'll come to latest news and quick links. And we have a corporate presentation, we have management interviews, which this will be on, and then project reports. And that one there has all kinds of reports from Stansberry Research, fundamental research, commodity, TV, another one out of England, and JS Research report out of Germany. There's got to be about a dozen of them there. Yeah, so you can go check those out. But let's talk about what's going on this year and how that's going to be expanded. So George, you already mentioned that the Goldstorm here, we haven't found the edges of yet. And that's one of their goals this year. In fact, they have a couple of phases. So they've announced phase 1 drilling, and their focus on phase 1 drilling is the Goldstorm. And what they want to do is move the majority of the 7.9 million ounces of inferred over to measured and indicated, which will increase the value of the company by about 40% right there. And then they still need to find the edges of it. So Ken actually told me, he said, last year, I think we had about 72 out of 74 holes that hit or something like that. And one of those was they just didn't get to their target area. He says, I'm actually looking for, duds, dusters this year to try and see if we found the edge of this thing or not. So they are going to expand the Goldstorm on top of moving the inferred over to measured and indicated. And that'll be the focus of phase 1. And that's already started with 4 drills up there right now.
And that's a serious campaign, right? 4 drills.
Oh yes. Yeah, exactly. They announced 30,000 meters so far. They have 4 drills up there right now. They are on the glacier right now. And then what happens is when the snow melts on the edge here, then they'll bring in 2 more to put up into there as well. And so the overall campaign that they're looking at for the whole thing is 50,000 meters plus. And so what's actually really good about this picture is you can see the 4 major deposits that we think are there. There's some that aren't even listed on this, but you can see the major ones. That's Goldstorm. And on either side of it, what they're calling the Northeast anomalies, or what was known as the Orpiment Zone in the past, and the Perfect Storm, and the Eureka over here.
Perfect Storm, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Can we talk about that deposit in particular, even though not a whole lot of work has been done there? But
no,
the potential there seems to be another Goldstorm or bigger.
That's true. And when I have shareholders calling me, they're usually asking about the Perfect Storm, because that's the one they're really excited about.
Come on.
I should say
isn't good enough with what it's given you to date.
Yeah. I will say this before we move to the Perfect Storm, just looking at the Goldstorm really quickly, and back to what that NI 43-101 told us, is not only is it really big, but the recovery is really good too, as well. They had 96 to 98% gold recovery in a pyrite concentrate, which is just fantastic. And there's a lot of different ways to be able to separate the gold and the pyrite, either on site or, because of the logistics and everything, it could be done off site as well. But that's fantastic. The grade that they have is right in the neighborhood of all the other mines in the area that are producing. One's moving towards production. And the last thing is that 300 zone. So if we just jump back one slide again there, George, the 300 zone, if anyone hasn't followed us yet, is just really the top 300 meters of the Goldstorm. And it grades out really close to a gram per ton gold. And that's the richest areas right at surface. So it is showing potential to be able to have an open pit mine there and start off with that and be able to mine for quite a few years, pay off your CapEx, and then be able to go for everything else. So what I'm saying is, really the Goldstorm itself is a huge company maker and a huge potential for a mine. Now we get to the Perfect Storm.
And George, you can take control of the screen again. I was just moving around.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no problem. So Ken Conkin, who is the head geologist for Tudor Gold, and just if anyone didn't know by this point, he was the head geologist for Silver Standard when they took over the Brucejack, and he was the one who left that company and started Pretivm, and then developed that into a mine in 2017. Retired, and then when he saw what was going on here, he had to be part of this. So he's the perfect guy for the job. He knows the area extremely well, and when he's kind of a kid in a candy store, to be honest with you, on this project, because there's so many things to look at, but his focus is on finding the center of mass of this whole thing. So the Perfect Storm is the next one that he's looking at. And he actually referred to it as the perfect structural storm. And here are the reasons why. Let's just look at geology really quick. So we can see on this map here that this blue dotted line going through here, that's the Sulphurets thrust fault, which is responsible for all of the KSM deposits and the Goldstorm and potentially these other two on either side of Goldstorm. So that has in the perfect place for that. Then we have the Kaiba line here, which was Jeff Kaiba and Joanne Nelson's report from 2014, regional geologist, saying that really the big deposits up in this area are found within a few kilometers of this contact between the volcanic rock on the right and the sedimentary rock on the left. And of course, that's running right through the property as well. And then there's certain type of specific geology called geoclastic sequencing that we're not going to get into, which is there as well. And so when you look at the geology of it, everything's lining up perfectly for another major deposit. And if we just move to the next slide here, you'll see that this area right here is the Goldstorm. The Goldstorm's up here. The perfect storm is here. And Ken always talks about this natural rhythm or sequencing to this major system. And you can see it about every 2.5 kilometers. There's the Kerr, then the Sulphurets, then the Mitchell. The Snowfield happens to be the top half of the Mitchell. Then there's the Iron Cap. Then the Goldstorm is right where it should be geologically within this system.
You've referred to that before as a string of pearls almost.
Yeah, Ken's called it a string of pearls, just really big pearls. So, and then here's our Goldstorm here. And they are going to put some drills over here in Eureka, a few of them. It's possible that could actually be the top half of this, is similar to the Snowfield and the Mitchell. So this is actually a great slide here so that you can see it's right where it should be. And then the geophysics as well. So if we look at this area right here, it's highlighted. That's a magnetic anomaly. Underneath that, there's actually a magnetotelluric anomaly as well, which shows that the rock has the right impedance to be able to host gold like it has in all of these other. These other ones all have magnetotelluric anomalies as well. So does the perfect storm. And I have to talk about this this magnetic anomaly here. Ken has said that the magnetite came in at the same time as the other mineralizing events that took place. And so he thinks that the magnetic anomaly is somewhat representative of the potential of what could be there. And when you look at that, this has the
people
potential.
Be thrilled. I mean, what company in the world would be thrilled having either Goldstorm or Perfect Storm, and you've got both of them sitting side by side?
Exactly. And then one last feature, and then we got to move on. But that's this other thing called the Brucejack fault, which runs right up through here. And the rich stuff and the Brucejack mine and everything else, it's called Valley of the Kings, and it's all on the east side here of this fault. And what was interesting was that if you actually go back and read your press releases carefully, you'll find that there was high grade stuff found, stockwork found within the Goldstorm. And it's very similar to the stockwork that is the Valley of Kings stockwork. And so there's potential, certainly, since this is much closer, to find even more of that here, and potential for it to actually become significant in that deposit. So these are the geological and geophysical reasons why it's called the perfect storm. And it was drilled last year, a couple of small holes just over on the edge of it. They didn't have permitting at the time. Now they have permitting, and they're going to go in and actually drill this thing as well. So the potential of that one is is pretty fantastic. So and then if I switch over here, this again is just showing this fault line coming up right here and intersecting with the other fault line. And right about here, George, is where I crashed in the helicopter back in 2008. But that's another story that
Well,
you might
news
remember.
to me, but okay, we'll leave that in the future. But that's where you crashed. I didn't even know you crashed a helicopter.
Yeah, I thought I told you that. We all walked away. That's the bottom line. But it's just showing that, potential where you could have this type of stockwork if you actually look at the presentation for Tudor Gold. And I have to mention this, and that's that I wanted to be accurate with what Tudor Gold is doing on this project. They are the operators. We have a 20% fully carried interest, but they are the operators. It's their program. And so I'm using their slides to make sure that I'm accurate on everything. And it's a fantastic presentation. I think everyone should go to Tudor's website and look at their presentation. I'm only just showing you a couple slides from that. But this is just one slide showing the high grade stuff that I was talking about, where you have visible gold in the core and that type of thing. So in quartz veins. So to sum up the program, ultimately, it's converting the 7.9 million ounces of inferred over to measured and indicated to find the limits of the Goldstorm system, and then to start the focus towards, test the Eureka and do a lot more work on Perfect Storm. And then, of course, there have ongoing baseline studies for environmental studies, that type of thing. And the other really critical thing here is work towards a PEA, which is a preliminary economic assessment. That's a major point accomplishment for a company to be able to do. And that's based.
And to do that, how big is the 2021 program versus the 2020 program? Because the 2020 program gave you an immense amount of amazing data. How big is the 2021
It
program
did.
relative to that?
So the last year's program was just over 40,000 meters, and this year they're being projected at 50,000 meters plus. So we'll have to see how that goes. I have no doubt of their ability to be able to accomplish that. The first part they've already raised money for phase one. And I believe that they'll be able to have no problems raising money for as much as they want to do in phase two as well. This is one of the beautiful things about this program is most projects up there about 3.5 months, and these guys are double that, because they go in and they're on the ice and they leave when they're on the ice. And so they have a much wider window.
That's why that's why Tudor and the team is such an incredible partner to have. By the way, last question: what's the status of your relationship with Tudor? Because sometimes these relationships can be very distant. Don't call us, we'll call you. What's the nature of your relationship with Tudor?
Sure, and we're done with the slides now as well. So if you want to take that down. So Tudor's actually been a great company to work with. They really are. It starts at the top with Walter Storm, who, if anyone doesn't know, was involved in Osisko, becoming Osisko and funding them for the Malartic mine, which is now Canada's largest mine for gold. And just very, very successful. And he's brought that successful attitude and management skills into Tudor Gold. And then he's surrounded himself with good people as well. So he has Herbert, who he works with, and he has Ken, who he works with. He's the guy in the limelight because he's the rock star geologist who's making all this happen. But also Sean Pannell, who's the logistical guy and the drilling guy and everything else. And when you consider, just take last year as an example, over 40,000 meters drilled. And this is in a year when they had absolutely crappy weather up there and they had the COVID stuff to deal with. And yet they didn't have any problems with either. They pulled the whole thing off. They're going to do the same thing this year. And I'll just summarize it with this, especially in the last couple of years since Ken has got involved, really everything they said they were going to do, they did. And then some. They've exceeded expectations at every step along the way. I have no reason to not think they won't exceed expectations this year.
Do we expect real quickly, do we expect that obviously by the end of 2021, you have where do we go from here, what the priorities are, but when do you think results will start coming out from the drill program that's already started? Ballpark. I'm not asking.
I swear, last year was such a debacle, George, that I swore I would never answer that again. Last year they started to come out with results in July, but that depends just so much on the assay labs, right? And the assay labs
hindered last year by the way, the debacle wasn't you guys or Tudor, just COVID hit, everything was backed up, and it just caused issues.
Thanks for clarifying that. Actually, in fairness to them, they were just absolutely slammed. Hopefully they've accommodated for that this year. But I expect, a steady news flow really from, sometime in July all the way through to, well into the first quarter of next year. And then as we just mentioned, they're working on a PEA for next year, which would be just absolutely fantastic as well.
And I'd be remiss really quickly, Stinger Resources was spun out in March. How's that going? How's the Dunwell going? And we'll have a whole other webcast on that. But just since we're here, people probably say, I wonder what's going on at Stinger.
That's a good point. I'll just point out one other thing real quick before the Stinger, and that's that American Creek does have another project called the Awestruck Bonanza up in central BC, and it's a great property, and we'll be coming out with a program on that in the near future here. But switching over to Stinger Resources and the Dunwell is so fantastic. I keep seeing all these different companies and so forth up in the Golden Triangle, and I think they all have great stories, but none of them are closer. We're literally, 15 minutes from the adit down to the shipping port. And what we were looking at is, there's all these super high grade, it's a polymetallic system with super high grade gold. Historically, it was mined at about 6.7 grams per ton gold and about equivalent to that in silver, lead, and zinc. And so a lot of it's right along a main fissure zone with a fault running through it. And that's where we focused our drills. So we did about 3,800 meters of drilling over just over 20 holes or so, mostly shallow drilling in this case. And so we've sent those off for assay. And again, I'm not committing to when we're going to get assays back because we never know on that. But the drilling's gone really well. We have encountered, bands of mineralization on there and come across, sphalerite, which is zinc, and galena, which is silver and lead. And so, and usually gold isn't visible, so we'll have to wait for the assays to come back on that. But we're really excited about that. It's going very well. Thanks for asking.
Kelvin, thanks for joining us today, man. Amazing overview, especially going over the slides together, visually helping people understand what's going on at Treaty Creek, what Goldstorm is, what Perfect Storm is, how Goldstorm's initial resource estimate ranks. I thought that was powerful, and I can't wait to see what all you guys are going to pull off in 2021.
Well, thanks very much. I think we're just at a hugely opportune time right now, especially given how undervalued we are for our shareholders. So I think right now is the best time, regardless of company involved, to invest in this project.
Thanks for joining us, Kelvin. We'll have you back soon. Have a great day.
Take care.
For everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening by podcast that Kelvin Burton of American Creek Resources trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol AMK. For those who are new to the story, because you've seen some of the recent headlines, expanded drilling, all sorts of the 43-101 resource coming out that came out, and you want to know more about American Creek, first go to the profile page on the Agoracom, because there's a lot going on here and there's geology involved, and that can get complicated. So we've got it all summarized in good layman's 10,000, I don't even want to say 30,000 feet, 10,000 foot view. So you got a great view of it. And then, of course, right above Kelvin, you can see, head over to americancreek.com to do your deep dive due diligence. Guys, you see what's going on. You see the size of the drill program. 4 drills going on right now. They're going to add a couple more for 6. The JV partner is Tudor Gold. Walter Storm has already found and commercialized an elephant. So you've got to assume he's hunting for elephants again. And now you got to find out if American Creek, Tudor Gold are on to something. Only you can do that due diligence. We've told you everything we can tell you. Just don't say by the end of this year that we didn't tell you so back in June. Have a great day. See you next time.
Bye.